Welcome to the Business Trendsetter Podcast, where we talk about trends and how to use them to grow your business. My name is Manny Turan.
And I'm Adam Hartog.
We're Spark Partners. We're here every week to discuss all things trends, all things that drive the hearts and minds and wallets of customers, all aspects of, we touch on government a little bit, we touch on the market, we touch on ideas and products. And Adam, I hear that you might have bumped into something here that's kind of interesting to you.
Yeah, I did, Manny. I did. We talk a lot about the computer business and the participants in software and hardware. And of course, the Apple Worldwide Development Conference just happening. But I was introduced once again to the 3D printing business this week. And I got to tell you, it's exciting because it's a $20 billion business, which I didn't even really have my eyes on at all. Growing at 25% a year, it's going to be a $100 billion business in the blink of an eye, right? And it's just a world of things that are going on out there. And then I remember that way back 35 years ago or something like that, when I was at DuPont, we had a 3D printing group in DuPont, and they were making these polymers that what you could use to make things in the 3D print. And, it was hard at that time. It was just all experimental stuff. But now I can see that it's come way out of the lab, and it's really making a big deal. And I'm trying to get my arms around it. And I think it'd be really good for our listeners to get their arms around it because you're the mechanical guy. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit
today. Sure thing. Absolutely.
So, tell me what's going on in the 3D printing world. What's happening?
Sure. So first of all, the thing that is interesting, and you kind of touched on it, the 3D printing world or additive manufacturing is the bigger umbrella, has been around for about 43 years, a long time. And about 81 was the first sort of technology that was very similar to this additive technique, where rather than remove material from something, and you've got a block of metal, and then you either machine off or you add, or there's a process that removes material, and that's what you get your finished product. In the additive world, you add material, and it's the majority are different polymers, different other materials that will cure. There's even ways to 3D print metal now, so there's quite a lot of things happening in that world, and there's a lot of benefits that are sort of beyond the naked eye.
Okay, you got to get more basic for me here now, Manny, because I'm sitting here looking over at my office, looking at my printer over here, chucking paper out. Give me some handle on this printing process. Are we talking about something that's the size of a shoebox, or is it the size of a house? And kind of give me some handle about that.
Absolutely. So the sort of the typical, when you talk about 3D printing in today's world, people think about a desktop printer. This is about the size of a microwave oven, and it has the print area of maybe 6-inch cubed, give or take. And you can buy these, by the way, online for a couple $100, and you can use programs to print out all kinds of interesting things like this bird skull, which I'll go into a little bit later. But there's lots of things.
Second. I want to clarify this, man. Did you just say that our listeners could go buy a 3D printer for $200?
Yes.
Wow. So this is very real stuff for small and mid-sized business. This isn't just the world of General Motors and Boeing.
No, as a matter of fact, it kind of grew. The resurgence kind of came from the bottom in this case. It came from hobbyists that really took this idea and to the next level. Just like drones might have been at the government level, but then the hobbyists got involved and then kind of drove that technology down and up, so that now you can get these very sophisticated, very powerful drones for about $500 that'll shoot 4K video and are semi-autonomous. It'll follow you if you're like on a bike. You just tell it where to go and it'll kind of follow you around. And so a lot of that was driven by hobbyists, much in the same way the 3D printing world that we know today was driven by hobbyists. And I won't even talk about the internet, because that was also in effect driven by hobbyists. Ham radio operators back in the day would do a lot of things, and they kind of push the envelope of technology. And so, yes, you can go out, Adam, and buy a 3D printer for a couple $100, get some basic software, and be printing all kinds of things like this bird head at your leisure.
Wow, that's incredible. How are people? How are people using it in what's happening in terms of the business world? Is this something that's primarily done in, say, automotive, or what industries are using this technology and to do what?
Sure. So I think historically, as I mentioned, the idea of a desktop 3D printer is what most people have in their mind. But really, there's a huge market, and you touched on the $20 billion market, which is these giant machines that are the size of a UPS truck and bigger, right? They're doing not only just one off, they're doing production level additive manufacturing or 3D printing. And so, as far as markets are concerned, it's across the board. Medical, aerospace, you're talking energy. And a matter of fact, there's even home builders that are 3D printing, in effect, a house. So rather than use these specialized polymers, they use a specialized kind of concrete that they can sort of pour in place, and it almost like when you were to make like a log cabin out of those little Lincoln logs, kind of make it like that around, and you can actually 3D print a house.
Wow. Wow. So, okay. Now tell me, what are some of the applications? I mean, our listeners probably aren't going to be making houses with them, but kind of give me a little more flavor for some of these applications.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for business owners and executives with respect to 3D printing is how quickly they can get to the customer with a product. So, you and I talk a lot about trends. You and I talk about, how the market acts and all that. And getting a product or service to the market quickly, getting some feedback is immensely important. And so if you have to go and build a giant mold to do, if you're going to do something like injection molding, those molds take 2 months. By the time you order it, by the time you have it manufactured, by the time you have it delivered and put in place, and you cut and you basically put your first part in there, you're talking about months. Maybe at the most you can do it in a month and a half. With 3D printing, you and I, Adam, can come up with an idea in a matter of hours. We can have something printed out to go test with customers. So that's the one level, is get to market faster. The other thing that is, I think, more accessible to our listeners is the ability to do things like jigs and fixtures and things that are almost impossible to make using conventional methods of manufacturing, like either a mill, like this bird head. I know it's kind of a simplistic design, but I wanted to bring this to the attention of our listeners and our viewers. I'm holding this 3D printed bird head. Now, to make this using the traditional mill or lathe would take hours, because you've got these things inside, and you've got these effects that are sort of behind the ability of the machine, the tool, to get in there. In a 3D printing manner, you can do this in half an hour. And it's a way different kind of way of manufacturing. It's a different mindset in thinking. Rather than removing material, you're adding material.
So one of the things I'm hearing you say is that if our listeners like you and I have an idea, they could rapidly prototype the idea. They may not have to go get an expensive some engineer that's really highly trained to figure out what we need. We wouldn't have to necessarily go get a machine shop with really, really highly trained machinists to figure out how to put the first one together. I mean, you're making it sound like we can go from idea to prototype in often in a fraction of the time. Is that true?
That's absolutely true. You can go from concept to reality in a fraction of the time. You can make modifications. And guess what, Adam? You don't even need to own a 3D printer. There are companies out there where you send your file to them and they instantly give you a quote. And then you if you like it, you hit yes, you put your credit card in there, and in a day or two, you've got a product on your doorstep.
Wow. So now what you're telling me is, for people that are not dealing with software, that are in the real physical world, we now have technology that doesn't let that physical world be your obstacle, that you can get around the issues of how do I make it in a lot of instances with this technology.
Correct. And if we actually layer on top of that, Adam, things like the gig economy, the asynchronous life, AI, and mobility, you can basically do all this without even having a degree in engineering, a computer. All you have to do is have access to a developer. Say, hey, listen, I had this idea. Can you make me a bird head? They'll go out and download a file from somewhere, make some modifications to it. They'll send it to a 3D printing company. One of these is called Xometry. Xometry is a company that where you send your files to, they give you an instant quote. You say, I like it, and then they'll ship it right to you. All can be done remotely from anywhere you have access to the internet.
I mean, just so like just sitting around here in a brainstorming kind of way, I'm just sitting there thinking if our company we had an employee of the month or an employee of the quarter, we could actually take a photograph of the employee and we could make for them a statue that would be a replica of them of their head. And it would be, here's employee of the quarter, a statue, and instead of the old fashioned, loving cup that nobody really pays attention to, we could make really unique gifts for our employees as motivational tools, or our customers as well, motivational thank yous, things like that. Just one application.
Yeah, and the applications, Adam, are really endless. If we go back to the different markets, in medical, they're pioneering a lot of certain things that go inside of medical devices. They're pioneering ways. Just imagine in the future, they're going to be customizing a stent for your heart based on your geometry. They'll print it out next door. They'll clean it up, put it right inside you in a matter of minutes. With respect to aerospace, they're doing lots of brackets, lots of internal titanium pieces, by the way, titanium. They can make titanium brackets that go inside of aircraft to hold wires and all that. In automotive, I know that Volkswagen is doing lots of things inside of the interior, where, I mean, some of these brackets are very complicated. And to have a giant, like I mentioned before, a giant die and a big block of metal they cut out, and a mold, they take very expensive. They take a long time. You can just have a giant machine print out thousands of these every night and get you what you need much more quickly than usual.
I met an entrepreneur about 20 years ago, and he had developed a new, let me call it a pair of pliers, the new pliers. And it was a pretty neat gizmo, I thought. And he had gone to Home Depot and your typical hardware sellers, and they had showed it to him. And they said, this would be a great item for us to run as a Christmas promo. We put it out on the end cap. We'll make it available to sell for $19.95 or something like that. It'll be a unique. It'll be our big push for 1 year. I said, whether to stick around, people want this tool forever, we don't know. We want to make one run at it. He went to, okay, I got it. I got yours. I got everything ready. Boom, it was going to cost him $700,000 for the tooling to do this, to make this, to go make these in volume. Well, what you're telling me is this printing could have made the tooling for him probably, kind of put the tooling together in a matter of days, and might have been able to do it at a cost that was much more affordable.
Yeah, and there's lots of companies now out there that are doing this, Adam, at different levels. And I think that for manufacturing companies, it's still, and I run in this sort of world. For a lot of people, they still see it as a Mickey Mouse tool. But those that are smart recognize that it's a lot more than that. So I'm showing a little bird head here that I could very easily it's pretty strong, but they're now doing some this metallized sort of 3D printing that is as strong as the traditional metals out there, and they can be done in very unique shapes and very quickly.
So I just did a quick look, and I had names that came up like Evonik, 3D Systems, EOS, Proto Labs, and Xometry. That's XOM,
Right.
ETRY. Are these the kinds of companies that our listeners could contact? And for example, if they need a part that's metal, aluminum or titanium, because that I'm going to presume is a much more expensive machine printer than the one that uses polymers.
Right.
So
And see,
is that where they go, to these kinds of companies?
yeah. And I know I have experience with Xometry in particular. So the way that Xometry works, it's a very interesting platform. It's a kind of a clearinghouse, if you will. You take your idea, you take your drawing, you upload it to their website. Their website has some creative technology and some AI behind it that will tell you in a matter of seconds what they believe they can charge you for this. And then what they do on the back end, they go out to all their network of manufacturers and they say, hey, listen, do you want to bid on this? And this is the amount, say for instance, they charge you $100. They'll go to their network and they'll say, can you build this for 75? And you'll have people saying absolutely. And then so that they get the bid and then they can manufacture it. And the thing about Xometry in particular is they are agnostic to process. So whether it's 3D printed, whether it's machined in the traditional manner. There's a bunch of ways they can actually make things. They're agnostic. You go there with your idea, and they can actually help guide you through the process of making it a real thing.
I watch cooking shows, and every once in a while, a cooking show somebody's go to little restaurants, and somebody will be making something like, I don't know, raviolis, and they'll have this ravioli machine that was made 100 years ago, and it's totally probably considered obsolete, but for a small restaurant works great. But nobody's going to make one anymore. Or I've seen other manufacturing processes. I watch TV shows that talk about inventions, and they'll have a manufacturing machine, but the machine will be very, very old. Would this be a solution when somebody breaks apart on an old piece of equipment? Say, man, I don't want to spend $10,000 or $100,000 on a new piece of equipment. I just wish I could get this part. But that machine's now gone. The manufacturer's gone. Is this a solution for that?
Absolutely. There's a whole marketplace for that, and I mean, this could extend the life of lots of other machines. And the fact that it's sort of like, especially with Xometry, you get more than one option to how you're going to make this into reality. They'll say, okay, if you machine it, it's going to be this much. If you have it 3D printed, it's going to be this other amount. And so then you can choose, hey, you know what? I'm going to do the 3D printed first, and I'll use that temporarily, and then maybe down the road I'll get it machined in full metal.
I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of manufacturers over time, in Wisconsin and Ohio and Michigan. And now we manufacture everywhere. California, I think, is the largest manufacturing state in the United States just because of its sheer size. Texas, big again in manufacturing. And one of the things that this makes me think about is in manufacturing world, things break. You're out there and you've got, hoses and fittings, hydraulics, and you've got valves on hydraulics, and you've got belts. And you've got manufacturing, very complicated and very roboticized. You don't have a lot of people, and if the machine breaks, the part breaks, then the manufacturing can be forced to stop. Is this a solution for the supply chain problem for those guys, so that you sit there and say, wow, whenever, if my equipment breaks down, instead of going back to the manufacturer and waiting for the part to come from China or the part to come from Japan or wherever, right, offshore, because so much is offshore, Vietnam, Thailand, a much faster turnaround to get up and running?
Absolutely. And the thing about this industry, Adam, is you sort of hit it on the head in the very beginning, is it's growing very quickly. Right now, the machines that would create industrial level, super strong material products are probably 100 grand, we'll say, for a good entry level machine that's capable of doing that. They're not going to be cheap, but every year they get cheaper and less expensive. So I would say that in 10 years, Adam, that same machine that's 100 grand will be like 2 grand. And every manufacturing company will have one of these in the corner. When something breaks, they'll take the file and they'll push it over there. And then in an hour or two, they'll go pick up the part and drop it right in. Imagine things that, remote locations that don't have access to lots of, parts, whatever. They can actually have one of these machines there to supply them with material and parts.
So I know that today you can run AutoCAD on a PC. So you can get a $500 PC. You can load up AutoCAD for like $100 or something like that, and you can start to design a part. Is that the kind of file that a typical engineer, somebody as common as you and I, that sit around like to play around with stuff, is that the kind of file we could create that could feed into this system?
Similar. So AutoCAD is a sort of a two-dimensional representation of something, and there's something else. There's other versions of AutoCAD that do more the 3D stuff. But 3D modeling, there's one of the most popular tools is called SolidWorks. And SolidWorks, in the program, you give it a material property, and you can go and build your part in the computer. And the computer has its own sort of gravity and laws of physics. So it'll tell you how much it weighs. It'll say, okay, this material, based on this geometry, weighs 2.2 kilograms, which is a pound, which is sorry, other way around. But basically, you can do all that in this code, ship it to Xometry, have it built. And I would even say that the way things are going now, you can do this stuff all online. There are some online tools that are similar to SolidWorks, where all you need is a tablet. I mean, wow. I don't know if you ever played with Google SketchUp, but similar to that.
Okay. All right. Well, that's okay. So once again, there's no reason for the small and mid-sized guy to think this is outside of his bailiwick. I mean, the cost to get any of the tools are very inexpensive. A computer, a tablet, and some software that's inexpensive. We're using an online tool. Wow. That, I mean, I didn't know the market had developed that far and that fast. That's pretty incredible.
I think that the biggest thing holding it back is the fact that many manufacturing companies still don't think it's a viable option. Their mode of thinking, Adam, is very linear. This is how we do things. This is how we've always done things, and it's up to these early innovators that are really pushing the limit to create more and more activity. But it's becoming more and more prevalent. I mentioned Volkswagen, for instance, is doing lots of things now in automotive, and the traditional things in Detroit is catching up. I'm sure within Tesla they have lots of parts that are 3D printed, and it's just going to gain more and more popularity.
So back again, remember you and I, we always talk about design for engineering. And, once you get your prototype, figuring out how you want to make it better, make it more operable. And one of the things that I know I find out is that often when I start to try to put something together, it's a real, used to call it a Rube Goldberg machine. A lot of young people probably don't know what that means, but there's a cartoonist named Rube Goldberg that would, you want to boil an egg and it had 120 steps for the machine to boil the egg. It's very complicated, more complicated than it needed to be. And that's where the design for manufacturing comes in, go from idea to something that can be replicated. I'm wondering if this might be a way where I've got something and I'm trying to weld three things together and I'm trying to put a sensor on it and I got an electronic probe over here and I to get, it's again, this Rube Goldberg thing that I put together to try to control my manufacturing process or control the heat while I'm doing something. It sounds like this would be a way to get rid of all those bits and pieces and design up a much better part.
Absolutely. And the beauty of this is you can have it made, you can make it, and you can test it out quickly. For you to do that in the traditional method using a mill or a lathe, it might take we'll say a full day to get it down. And if you have a problem, you've got to kind of start all over or maybe make adjustments. So you might end up burning 2 or 3 days to make one jig or one fixture for your process. Whereas if you had the file, if you knew the geometry and you printed it out, you could have it built, and basically made in a few hours. Some of these are slower than others, so that, they might take overnight to do the process, but some of the newer ones can do it in a matter of minutes.
Well, the other thing that I think I'm understanding what you say is that if I had an idea, and I'd say I wanted to make it usable, it would need to be made out of aluminum or some other metallic product. I could make the first one though out of polymer just to see if the design is effective. And I might be able to make that first one out of polymer in less than a day and have a look at it and try to see, oh, that's a weakness in my design or whatever.
Yeah, you could even make it out of metal. There's ways to make these out of metal as well. They're going to be more expensive, obviously, and they're not going to have all the properties of the metal that you might be used to, but it'll get you really close to that end. And what I like to use it for is for marketing purposes. If I'm trying to demonstrate something like the internal part of a machine that we're building, I can have a mock-up made in the same 3D printing process that I can open up and show the action of how you actually make this. And I can make that out of this material that's extremely strong and durable. And really the magic is I can do it quickly and I can do it repeatedly.
That's really cool because I remember, again, I loved it whenever people would make an engine or a motor or something like that. And then to demonstrate how it worked, they would create one that was sort of sawed in two. So you could see all the internal workings.
Right.
Those were so rare to see because they were so hard to make. They were so expensive to make. But they only big companies could do it. They only do it when they have really someone that's been selling for a long time and they're trying to push the envelope. Well, I like your idea, which says, hey, if it's hard for me to explain how something works, make it out of polymer, cut it in half, and then demonstrate it. And then the magic's is gone. Now people really know what's working. And
right.
That could really help push through the final sale.
Yeah. And we're not experts, obviously, Adam, in this whole world. I mean, I know enough to be extremely dangerous. And you can go to YouTube and spend hours looking at all these things that are made, and you can learn a lot more than what we're sharing in this podcast. I think the big thing for our listeners and viewers about this podcast has to do with the mindset. The mindset. Executives and business owners and folks that make decisions on products and services, change your mindset. Think about another path you can take to make something into reality that's not in the traditional means. And 3D printing could be that option.
I think part of this also is just it's a mindset, like you said, not doing it the old way, but also realizing that this new mindset has sort of infinite options to it. And what I mean by that is, like I said, I think that there's probably dozens, maybe even hundreds of polymer variants that could go into this thing. And so consequently, you've got, how I will make it, how I will design it, what material it's made out of. There's just a lot of options here for trying things to figure it out. And it's cheap enough that you can, instead of thinking, I got to get it right the first time, you can say, let me get it close and see where I am and iterate your prototyping, iterate your design process.
Absolutely. I have a friend that runs a company that makes 3D printed crowns for your teeth.
Oh, teeth.
So they basically,
for a minute. I was thinking about King George.
no, they make it crowns for your teeth. So they can basically take measurements. The dentist can take a measurement in the traditional means, or they can do the molds and all that, the kind of old school ways. They send the file to this company called 3D Smiles, and they basically can very quickly make you a crown, ship it overnight. And this technology is advancing so quickly that in the future you'll be able to have this done on the spot. And there's another company that I know that that actually has a technology very similar to Invisalign that can print you that Invisalign kind of like braces, like almost like you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
They can
yeah,
print it. They'll make
yeah.
they'll make a machine. They're making a machine that will print it in the dentist's office. So you send it to file, and while you wait in the lobby for 10 or 15 minutes, they can print this thing for your mouth, this appliance, come in, make sure it fits okay, send you home with it.
Back again, what I'm thinking in my head, because I'm more of that electrical kind of guy, and I'm so excited about ChatGPT because it's a way that anybody can get their hands on some artificial intelligence. It's free to low cost, and you can generate text, you can generate movies, you can generate videos, you can generate all this stuff. It's very low cost, and you experiment with it. And what I'm hearing you say is that, just like I keep saying, get out there and try it, experiment with it, get people involved with it on their jobs. Until you use it, you'll never be able to figure out how to make things better. It sounds like that this business, this technology is the same way. Get in there, try it, experiment. You make some things so you can get your brain to explode open and get outside the box and start thinking a whole different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And this tool is ideal for the blank space teams. Think about taking your blank space, your white space team that is looking at a new market, a new technology, whatever it is, right? And they have their little moat out there. They're working on their product or service. And you can say, okay, you can use these tools at your disposal, including 3D printing, to create a product, to create a mock-up, to go test it in the market, and to maybe start to drive some sales in that direction. I mean, there's a huge world that is lying underneath the concept of 3D printing.
Oh, I just when I sit here and think about it, if you're selling a product and your manufacturing cost is $1,000 on that product, this is the opportunity to sit down and use a 3D printer to come at it 4, 5, 6 times. See if you can get your manufacturing costs down to a lot lower number, maybe $200, right? Which then could expand your profits because you got good market share now, or expand your market because you could drop the price with a different product. Sometimes, you go to buy something and the only thing you can get is a very, very heavy duty, high quality solution. And here, maybe somebody could say, here's my high quality solution. This is the old one I've had. Here's the new quality solution. And let the marketplace decide, kind of where they want to go with it. And just create all these different options for people.
Right. And, spend some time, for our listeners and viewers, spend some time on YouTube, on the internet. I mean, there's a wealth of information of what's happening with the additive manufacturing space. Adam and I, we're here just to kind of open your eyes to a lot of new possibilities of how you can actually start to create some demand, create some products, get some feedback from customers, and maybe lower your costs. But ultimately, it's about getting your product out to the market as quickly as you possibly can.
Wow, Manny, this is exciting stuff. I'm glad I got you on the team.
Absolutely, Adam. Well, any final thoughts for our listeners and viewers?
I think they need to get out there and experiment with it. I think definitely if you're doing something in the physical world, making a product, selling a product, you need to get one of these machines, one of these printers, and start thinking about what you could do. Because you're not gonna get outside your own head until you do it and you experiment. Like you said, white space team, black space teams, or yourself, just getting your mind in a new place, just so that you can start to think up new ideas. It's as exciting as artificial intelligence, and maybe a lot more fun.
Exactly. Very well said, Adam. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, Manny.
Cheers.